this brand just came naturally to me because everywhere I went, it would be like, hey, oh, where did you get that jacket? Or where did you get those shoes or these earrings? So eventually I was just like, let me create a brand that reflects me, my style, that women seem to like, and really bring women together to do these campaigns and also give them a stepping stone. So I've had models start out in FOR WMN and then end up doing Fenty Beauty or do the Yeezy shows. Yeah, so it's just a stepping stone for some women just to get their portfolio up, just to get an opportunity to do something creative.
Y'all, welcome to Hella Latino. Oh, it is always a treat for me when I get to do these in person, live with my guests. Like, the vibes are just immaculate. You feel me? Today, I'm talking to Lariza Quintero. She is the baddest marketing mommy hailing from Queens. Lariza is an experienced website and digital marketing pro with a background in SEO, media, e-commerce, and currently leads the global B2B website team at TikTok. O sea, no big deal. She is also the founder of FOR WMN, an online brand and social platform dedicated to uplifting and empowering women through bold fashion and storytelling. In this episode, we're in person, live from New York in her hometown, talking first gen things and vibing and, bueno, tapping Mamis y Papis, you're in for a treat. I'm so happy that we're doing a live Hella Latino or Hella Latina podcast, and just so happy that you're here. We've spent a lot of time together today. We just did a FOR WMN photo shoot. We're going to talk about what FOR WMN is, but let's introduce yourself. Like, tell me how you identify and why.
Well, thank you for having me today. We did spend a lot of time together today.
She's tired of me. She's not saying it. She's like, oh,
no, I love creatives. So, my name is Lariza Quintero. I identify as Latina. I grew up in New York, born and raised in Elmhurst, Jackson Heights area. And, now being 30-something, I look back at my journey in New York, and it's been a melting pot living in New York, how I identify myself. I know we've had this discussion around, are you an Afro-Latina? And that's very fluid for me as well because, I've always been a bit lighter compared to other people in my family. So in regards to the way I identify, it's always been Latina. But as I continue to evolve, that title could always change as I connect to my roots. But for now, just Latina. So thank you for having me on your Hella Latina podcast.
Hey, we here. I want to talk about, so I always go back because I think there's a quote that I say often, and I know my audience is like probably tired of me saying it, but I say a quote that my dad told me when we were younger. Si no sabes de dónde vienes, nunca sabrás dónde vas. If you don't know where you came from, you'll never know where you're going.
Right.
And I like going back in time. So tell me about where the immigration story starts and why it happened.
At least my family's immigration story, it definitely started 30-something years. So basically what I have on this earth, they came from Colombia and migrated to Jackson Heights, Queens. And if anyone knows about Jackson Heights, it is Little Colombia. So for them, it was home away from home. And it's just, a sanctuary for many that come to this country. So that's where my family's immigration story started, but there's also pockets in LA and other areas. But my father chose New York, and I'm glad he chose New York and not the West Coast because I don't drive. So I don't know what that like would have been.
Drive?
I don't drive.
You don't know how to drive?
I don't know how to drive.
Is that common?
That's hopefully not. But yes, for New Yorkers, we're privileged with the trains. I would say that.
Wow.
But in regards to my immigration story, I was born here, but all my family did migrate from Colombia. And yeah, it's been a big lesson being the firstborn, the first gen, kid in the family, navigating life, understanding, all the different pathways that are accessible to us versus, if I was born in Colombia where my parents are from. So I think, a lot of privilege that comes with being first gen, right? I think we need to acknowledge that. But yeah, it's been a crazy ride being a kid from New York, especially Jackson Heights, Queens.
I hear a lot about Jackson Heights. I know it's Little Colombia. Did your mom also immigrate over?
Yes.
Oh, she did?
Yeah.
They didn't know each other in Colombia?
They did. They got married in Colombia. Their love story started in Colombia.
Oh, cute.
And then,
do you know their love story?
Bits and pieces. I think back then it was a lot of the salsa dancing, a lot of parties. So equivalent of Bad Bunny parties, I guess, nowadays.
You're like, what we know as perreo, they knew as salsa.
They fell in love with the club type of vibes.
Wow.
Next thing you know, they're 20, 30s, our age, coming to a foreign country that, I tell my fiance now that I wouldn't even know what to do with that. Going to a whole different land, a foreign land where I don't know the language, getting accustomed, stimulated to that lifestyle. So shout out to my parents, but
shout out to the Quinteros. Why did they immigrate over? Do you know?
Yeah, opportunities. Where they're from in Cali, Buenaventura in Colombia, it's predominantly Afro-Colombians, predominantly Black Latinos. And that area is always forgotten, Cartagena is booming now, but Buenaventura is a place that still is, the majority are still under poverty. There's not a lot of resources, government. So just for resources and a new opportunity, my parents saw that as an opportunity to come and raise their family here.
So growing up in Jackson Heights, did you feel, this might be an interesting question for you. I think sometimes a lot of our parents come here and they try to assimilate, right, to American culture. But now you're in Jackson Heights. So what does American culture mean to you as you're growing up in this area?
So I was very privileged, like I said, living in Queens and Jackson Heights because it's a melting pot. It is probably the most diverse place in the world. And when I
hear that a lot about different little boroughs. And I've interviewed a lot of New Yorkers and they always say that.
They're lying. They're
like,
lying.
Brooklyn is the most diverse. Oh, this is the most diverse. I need to have all of y'all together and just have which one?
We're called the world's borough. So that, and we have the globe. If you ever seen in Flushing Meadow Park, we have that globe in the park. And it just represents literally all the melting pots in Queens, whether you're Brazilian, Mexican, Ecuadorian, Colombian, from, Thailand, Bangladesh. You have everything in at least Elmhurst, Jackson Heights, and overall Queens, I would say. So growing up, yes, I feel like Jackson Heights was Little Colombia, but I went to school with a lot of kids from India, Bangladesh. So I've been able to really, see the world at a young age and really adapt to other people's culture really quickly. And I think that's always been a drive to travel, just because I look back at my upbringing and it was always really diverse. So I never felt like I was the only kid in school that was, brown. I never felt like, maybe growing up in OC or, other areas in the United States, you would be probably one of the only Black or brown kids in your class. I never felt that growing up, just because it's been so diverse.
Did you ever feel that, being the only?
I felt it more in college, and we'll probably get into that, being the only woman in her computer science classes and her cybersecurity classes. That's when I saw it change. I'm like, okay, I'm the only one in these rooms. But at least in elementary school, in high school, I've always been surrounded by people that look like me.
And it sounds like you were always surrounded by kids of immigrants.
Yes.
Too. So it's like y'all are all kind of first gen navigating the journey without even talking about it. It was like a shared language.
A shared language, just understanding, each other's cultures. Wow. You would have a Venezuelan friend, a Mexican friend, and it was just this melting pot, like I said.
Was it a conversation, when you guys were in school, oh, I'm from Venezuela or I'm from Colombia? Was that a thing? Or you guys just
I think it was a thing. You still had your pockets of Colombians that would play the soccer. Everybody had their thing based on their race. But at the end of the day, everybody would really come together. It wasn't segregated. Let's say, all the Indian kids on one side, all the Hispanic kids on one side. It never really felt like that.
Wow. And I don't know what that feels like, because I grew up in San Diego, so I was the minority in terms of the Latino minority, right? It was like, if you weren't Mexican, then you were just like, oh, what are you?
What are you? Right.
Yeah, you probably never heard the term, do you speak Mexican? I used to hear that all the time.
Do you speak Mexican? Right.
Do you speak? I'm like, no, I speak Spanish. And I always give love to my best friend, Alexis, who's still my bestie to this day. But she used to always defend me in school, she's Honduran, she speaks Spanish. She would always be the one telling everybody. I'm like, listen to her.
Listen to her. She's right.
Mi plátano. But I'm curious for you, as you're navigating, you're kid of an immigrant, you're surrounded by them, and now you're going to college. I think there's something when we're younger, we don't realize that we are a kid of an immigrant or what an immigrant means. No one tells you, Larisa, you're first generation. That term didn't even come into my life until later. When did that term come into your life? Do you identify with it? And what has it meant to you?
Absolutely. I think first gen started to hit me harder in college. Well, high school senior year. when I was starting to navigate those conversations of, okay, where are you going for college? What is going to be your major? What, what help, what financial help are you going to get? Do you know what a FAFSA is? Like all these things that I'm like, wait, I'm a first gen kid. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, what you mean I need to get a Parent Plus loan? Like, what does that mean for my mom? Like, these conversations that as a young kid, and as a kid of immigrants, we're always forced to be like their lawyers, their financial advisor at 12.
That part.
But
and then it comes to our club, you're like, what?
You're like, wait. But I was not prepared for that transition between a high school senior to a freshman in college, just because I didn't have anyone to really go to. I had my cousins, but it wasn't, a quick call of like, hey, how do I navigate, getting into college and stuff like that. So it was really hard and a lot of figuring it out. It wasn't like ChatGPT now that you could just look up, hey, give me the step-by-step guide to getting a student loan. Like it wasn't those things. And, translating for my mom, for my dad, it was a lot. So I think that's when I really got really serious with the fact that, okay, I'm a first gen. I'm the first one going to college in my family.
Yeah.
This is a learning curve for all of us. Let's figure it out.
For all of us.
Yeah.
Did anything become clear to you in those moments? And I ask that because I remember doing FAFSA. Girl, when I tell you, I was sitting there and there was a question around how much do your parents make?
Right.
I had never known that information, ever, because money is not talked about in the household. De eso no se habla. And so I asked my mom, Mami, ¿cuánto hasta el año? And she's like, ¿por qué tiene que saber eso? Like, she's like, on defense. She's like, no, we're not talking about that. And I was like, no, you have to add it to FAFSA. Like, that's how they're going to either give it to me or not. And she told me how much. It was like 13 grand. And I was like, Mami, ¿qué? That's how much you make a year? And that was the moment, I think, where I was really like, damn, how do they have us survive 7 kids? How with making $15K a year? It was like, it was a crazy like moment of whoa. And
realizing it.
I remember when I got into school, I cried. Not because I was happy, but because I was like, well, how the hell am I going to pay for this?
Right. Right.
I got FAFSA, but there's still you got to live there. You got to move there. You got to do all the things. Like, I remember crying because I'm like, I don't know if I can do it or if it's even worth doing. Like, is it going to be worth it?
Right.
Like, did anything become clear to you while you were in that process?
Definitely. I was like, okay, my parents are signing these papers with the hope that I'm going to become something in the future. But everything, whether it was books, supplies, dorm stuff, that fell on me. So quickly understanding the concept of money. I wasn't like other kids. I know, I think in high school you got a green card and you were able to work. I don't know if that's a thing in the West Coast, but they would give you some sort of card that you're like, okay, you're under 18, you could go find a job. I didn't do that. So college was the first time I was really, really working. Yeah. That the moment I stepped in, I was like, oh, books are this much? Okay. Okay. Right. So I think the concept of hard work and that drive that, okay, I'm in here. I need to really make something out of the situation.
Yeah.
It better pay off. That was my mentality. I'm like, all this work and all this money better pay off, especially that pressure of being the first to go to college.
And now you're in college.
Yes.
And you're the first there. Tell me about navigating that journey and being the only in some of those spaces. Did you feel, well, let's talk about that. Being the only, and did you feel like you had resources, something to tap into to go for help, support, resources?
So I actually started college as an anthropology major and also sociology.
Okay.
Yes, a lot of people don't know that. Right. And it was,
why anthropology?
I was just intrigued by the world, by the concept of people, how pockets of people live in their communities, just holistically how interactions of human behavior plays out. So that was sociology and anthropology. But quickly, my dad was like, Lariza,
¿Qué te pasa?
¿Qué te pasa? ¿Qué es esto? Like, what are we doing with this major? Like, what are you going to become of this? And he knew I was always really good with computers. Like, I remember my dad and he would bring computers from work, the ones that would be left in the trash, and him and I would work on rebuilding it.
I remember one of my favorite memories of my dad is driving on the freeway, and he saw a TV in the middle of the road, and he stopped. And I'm like,
just to bring
on the freeway, he circled back, turned, and like literally got on the side. He's like, "Eso está bueno." Like, we need to take.
So we were builders,
Extra.
but we were just fixers.
Yeah.
Right? But that became something that intrigued me. So I remember him bringing the first mobile phone and things like that, printers. So I was exposed to that evolution of technology.
Yeah.
Because my dad would bring all these, just systems and things to play around with.
Yeah.
So he quickly was like, Lari, why don't you transfer to something in computers? Like, maybe give that a try, see if you like it. You're already good at it.
And I'll give you some money, some you.
He saw something that I didn't see at that time, but he saw something.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, Bob, if you're telling me I'm not going to make money with this major, shout out to anthropology and sociology majors out there. But I just knew for me, I needed to pivot if I wanted to make money or something for myself that I could really grow into.
Yeah.
That's when I made the pivot to computer security. Wow. So a lot of coding, JavaScript, Python, all these coding that like as a young kid.
You were doing that?
Yeah, I was doing that.
Wow. And you were like the only woman in the class.
only woman, the only Latina. So I did have other women, but they were usually Asian women, Indian women predominantly.
And you're over here holding it down for Colombia. You're like,
Colombia
I'm in here.
for Latinas, brown women.
For New Yorkers.
Right, for New Yorkers. And I had all these smart men and, people in these classes. The majority of my professors were all males. So it was very intimidating, even submitting my projects and, whether I was debugging a code and really getting stuck, I'm like, I didn't want to ask my male counterparts because I'm like, yeah, they'll probably deem me as, stupid, or it was just this imposter syndrome at, a young age, even in college. So navigating that, I was like, okay, let's figure it out. And like I said, we didn't have ChatGPT, so shout out to the kids nowadays.
Right.
But you have to hours in the library spent trying to debug code and understanding all these classes. And yeah, eventually 4 years later, I did graduate with something around computers.
You did? You
Yeah.
graduated? Oh my, I didn't know this about you. Context. I know Larisa through the work that we do now. And I know you as someone that is like marketing and web.
Right.
And I'm like, and I'm piecing it together in my head, but how did it happen? Like, how did your career? Here's the thing. Sorry. I'm going fast. But the thing about being first gen is that you just don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Like you don't know. Your parents come here for opportunity and they know that, you being a US citizen, you're going to have opportunity. But what is that?
Right.
And like, they don't know. So they send you out there and you're like, okay, I'm just going to have my intuition and like, I'll figure it out. But you being in those classrooms and you knowing like, listen, I'm going to do computer science, but then is that what you ended up doing? Like what happened after college?
So my minor was business marketing.
Oh, it was.
So I always had that drive that I'm like, okay, if it
you had a creative side and you did that.
Yes. And I was like a business side at that. Then I'm like, okay, if this doesn't work out, I have a business minor and I could always fall back on that. Yeah. And this is before digital marketing was even a thing. So SEO, paid search, even social, they weren't booming. They were not a big thing, at least, in the classes that were taught in college. So for me, having that backup, now looking back, was a blessing in disguise because now let's say I graduated, and I did graduate. I didn't end up going into the cybersecurity realm that I wanted, nor did I become a coder, but I did fall into digital marketing and slowly being introduced to the world of websites. Even though I had that background, this is where I really started to create that lane for myself. So in school, they were like, unless you become a coder, there's no other career out there, basically. That was the sentiment I used to get.
You put you in a box like that?
You got to become a coder.
Wow.
And now look, there's so many professionals in digital marketing making amazing money, creating their own digital marketing agencies that, you still need to be tech savvy, but you don't need to be a coder.
Yeah. You talking about how they said that's the only way to really like get a job, make money. It's interesting. Maybe this is like reaching when I say it, but I think that anyone that's first gen that's like navigating this journey, our journey is really all about defying these boxes that they want to put us in. And not just us, like they put everyone into boxes, right? Like to be a successful engineer, you have to do this or do that. For me, it was if you want to be a successful public relations, that was my major. PR, like whatever, you have to go into the agency route or you have to do this. And I think that we try it out. Like that's the power of being first gen. I'm like, we're able to just dip our toes and then adapt. And then we're like, maybe I don't want to do this. Like maybe I want to do that. And like, because we're so curious innately, because we don't know what we don't know, we're willing to try and we're willing to risk.
Right.
And I will also say a talent that we have, and I don't want to generalize, but I think a lot of us have it, is that we have parents that came here. You said it in the beginning of the episode. They came here. They knew that they'd have more opportunity. There's a sense of bravery and fearlessness with that.
Right.
Girl, imagine me moving to a country that I don't know the language. Like, what? What? Like, why would I?
What are we doing?
Like, that'd be crazy. Yeah. That'd be crazy. But there's a sense of bravery. Even if there was fear, the dream was bigger.
The dream is bigger.
And it's like that sense of bravery and fearlessness is so innate to us. I really believe that. And I really feel like if we tap into that, we're able to move in spaces that we didn't think we can move in.
Exactly.
But you've done it. So you're like now in the corporate world. Did you also navigate being the only in those spaces? Or were you like surrounded by people who did look like you?
No. Once I got my first job out of college, it was very interesting. I learned a lot, but I quickly realized as well that I was the only woman. So the first job was an agency job, amazing job. One of the, looking back, I learned so much, but I was the only woman at that time of color.
Wow.
Surrounded by white men.
Wow.
But
how was that for you? Going from Jackson Heights, as you're describing it, to now being in this room, what was that like? What was that feeling like?
I would say it's the first time that, it was interesting because I'd never been in a space like that. Like I said, in my computer science classes, I was the only woman, but at least there was still brown and black kids. Even though they were male, they was still,
Yeah.
But going into agency life, at least a startup, it was very interesting. Because I'm like, okay, sometimes I just want to, go into the room and talk about, music, Bad Bunny. And I couldn't relate. And that says, right.
Metallica?
Right. Like, okay.
I don't know. That's me generalizing. Right. I don't know.
So even happy hours and things like that, they were really interesting getting into that world. So, but I would say that I learned so much from this agency life, and they saw something in me. So going back to that, my dad seeing something in me, these white males in this agency saw something in me, and they hired me because they looked at my resume and they're like, this is exactly who we need right now. You're smart. You're going to hit the ground running. We want you in this agency. And I lasted there almost 7 years. And doing everything from digital marketing, specifically SEO, learning more of e-commerce, measurement, etc. I grew so much in that career that by the time I left, I was so enabled to take on more of a manager role, more of, this leadership role, because I elevated so much in that agency life. So,
wow. Was there moments where you navigated feeling like you were too different, or did you embrace like I'm the brown woman in the room? Like, were there moments where you felt like you had to hide or change or shapeshift, and were you okay with it?
I think in regards to changing physically, yes. So whether it was straight hair, I have big curly hair, and I was constantly straightening it. That was a thing. Even prior to agency life, that's just a thing. And in Latino culture, that women, at least my growing up experience, we had to strain our hair to kind of fit that stereotype. Right. Curly hair is not what it was, what it is now back then. So,
wow.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting about that is that for Honduran women, it's opposite.
Really?
At least in my family, like all my sisters, tias, primas, have big curly hair.
Okay.
But not me. Like, I'm the only one que salió. Well, you saw me. I'm like the whitest. And then I'm also like the straight. I told you it's like a weird wavy, but it's like, no, it's like straight almost. And my mom wanted to perm my hair.
Okay.
And I remember it being a conversation like, hacete el permanente when I was young. Like I was like, what, 10 years old? But beauty standards is so funny. But I know in American culture, I had good hair. I had good skin. Like I was like, I fit in this beauty, whatever standard. But Honduran women, it's like, you got to be like curly hair.
Right. And Colombian culture is so different, right? Because the beauty standards are very up there, right? When people see me, they don't assume I'm Colombian, right? Because I'm darker skin, I have curly hair. That Colombia is not the first thing I get until I speak and they hear my accent. Because the stereotype is that you're lighter skin, straight hair all the way down to your waist. That's the norm, right? But they forget there's, people from Cali, from Buenaventura, Cartagena, all these places that are not Medellin, Bogota. So people forget it's also a melting pot in Colombia. But what we see in the media has influenced us to think Colombians are just this way, right?
People don't realize that the highest population of Afro-Latinos, Colombia is the top 3.
Right, exactly. Brazil is on there. So people forget that,
Brazil,
right?
Haiti, Colombia, they're the top 3.
So people, I think in that sense, are getting to see more of Colombia for what it is, a diverse pool with the rise in Cartagena.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I think that pressure of having straight hair at a young age was something that just I was exposed to. So I did have to get those treatments when I was younger, the keratin, right? Those things to just straighten my hair. So
relax your hair, right?
Relax my hair, right? So
wow.
I hope that, this new generation is embracing everything and just continue to educate. It's not our job to educate, but I guess we have to keep pushing.
Okay, now I'm curious how your brand For Women came to life.
Yes.
Like what was the reason you're like, I need to create this brand? And what is it for the people who are listening?
Yeah, so For Women is my e-commerce platform. It is around accessories and eyewear. So that's the biggest thing. But it's also a platform for creative women. So whether you are up and coming model, whether you're a stylist, whether you're a photographer, I just love creative women. I wish I was more of a creative. And when I say that, I mean like a drawer and things like that, right? Yeah. Because I've always been so technical with the computer world, website world, that I admire women who are photographers, who are stylists, right? But I still have a little bit of that, like you said, but I've always been into fashion. So this brand just came naturally to me because everywhere I went, it would be like, hey, where did you get that jacket? Or where did you get those shoes or these earrings? So eventually I was just like, let me create a brand that reflects me, my style, that women seem to like, and really bring women together to do these campaigns and also give them a stepping stone. So I've had models start out in For Women and then end up doing Fenty Beauty or do the Yeezy shows. Yeah, so it's just a stepping stone for some women just to get their portfolio up, just to get an opportunity to do something creative. Yeah. So it's definitely a stepping stone and it's growing. It's still my little baby that I'm trying to grow, but it's a lot of work. But it's definitely
When did it come into your life? Like, what made you feel like? What made you even want to create the brand?
Yeah, so it was right before the pandemic, actually.
Oh, it was before the pandemic. Usually, it's like, pandemic time happened. Okay,
it was right before. It was about a year or 2 years right before, and I started to push it. And then the pandemic happened and I saw that more women were at home just shopping, naturally just shopping.
True. Yeah.
And then once things opened up a little, that's where I really started to push more photography. So getting, all these creatives in a safe space because everyone still had to wear masks and all those things, but they were just looking for a creative outlet, something out of this pandemic life. So that's where it really started to grow. And now, I'm trying to balance it now that it's the real world. People are back to work, no longer work from home every day. So
you're not shopping online.
Right, not shopping online as much or going to physical stores. So that's the new realm that I'm navigating, keeping inspired myself to continue the brand. I just have to remember, okay, this is a platform created for women and that should be something I stick by.
Was this also something that you felt your first gen identity come out in, like starting a business and like an e-commerce platform? Like, this is not something that you were taught growing up, or was it?
It was not. Yeah. But I also have seen so many people in the Latin community just grind, whether it's selling empanadas in Flushing Meadow Park, whether it's, selling anything in 82nd Street. People
our people are natural hustlers. Did I tell you that I'm about to put my nephews on blast, but my little nephews, they started selling Coca-Cola bottles at school. Like to other kids?
Empty ones or like...
No, like actual, like they were selling like Coca-Cola bottles like as their business in school. Whose kids are these? I was telling my brother, I was like, they're little hustlers. I was not proud of them. I'm like, are y'all good?
Right.
Yeah, my brother's like, they're fine. Like they're so spoiled. I don't know why they want more money.
Yeah,
But I'm like, hey, not the whole little Cordova boys having a
Right.
business. I think that was like the coolest thing for my nephews. I was proud of them, but I couldn't say that out loud. I was like,
Well,
"Go to school."
you see, at a young age, they're trying to
But
figure
no,
out,
our
right?
people are natural
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, and I would even say engineers. Like our
Exactly.
people are natural. They're creative.
Going back to the computers, right? Picking the TV up from the
Because who
court.
picks up a TV in the middle of the road?
Right. To try to
People
fix it.
But scarcity teaches you how to be resourceful.
Exactly.
Like that is why our innate talent as first gen, as anyone who grows up in that community, like we just naturally have those skills.
Right.
And that's why I'm like, it's not a surprise to me you have a side business and you have your career, but it's also like, is this where your first gen identity came out too? Like you were like, how am I going to figure this out?
Right. Just figuring it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whether it's finance, whether it's, how do you work with businesses abroad, marketing, branding, all those things you're learning by yourself.
And how do you balance that with your career?
It's interesting. Now, like I said, post-pandemic, it hasn't been the easiest, especially now with more of a leadership role leading an entire
the
team.
Whole ass manager.
Yeah, as a whole manager, and especially in the tech world, it's never easy, especially the climate we're in.
Yeah.
But I try to have a balance.
Yeah.
My fiance, he's so incredible. He's a rapper himself. He loves music, and he's an engineer by day. So just seeing him find the time to create always inspires me, because sometimes I just want to watch my reality TV shows. I don't want to do
watching?
Girl, Real Housewives.
I was about to say, because did you see Love is Blind this season? I feel like they also cut D&I.
Oh, yeah.
Girl.
Yeah.
I cut out when they started talking about the Republicans and Joe Rogan. I was like, I'm gonna have to tune out.
They need a little sprinkle of color in that one.
You don't Latino on this done?
No, that one is a dub.
Yeah, but Real Housewives got it.
New York. They are really diverse. I know they had the reunion.
Real Housewives, New York.
Yes,
watch you be into it.
They're
okay,
but yeah,
but you create instead.
And I create. Yeah, so
you can do both. You can watch your reality.
Right. Yeah. So I'm trying to get more into a habit of having more hours allocated in my week to really hone into for women. Same way, you meet up with your friends, you have time for the gym, etc. You need to make time for either a hobby or something you're passionate about, just because I feel like it fuels you, especially, work could be very overwhelming sometimes and becomes your whole identity in your whole life. You need, exactly. You
like
break
your
out.
skin starts breaking out. You start getting little eye bags. You're like,
exactly.
What?
You're like, wait, what happened?
I didn't have this before. My cheeks didn't fight gravity like this. I want to ask you, speaking of women, and I feel like a lot of our conversation is centered around women, and just you're a badass for all the things that you're able to do and still doing, balancing both, being recently engaged. You peep the ring on her finger. How do you navigate the expectations of a Latina woman? And I want to talk about this because I don't think we talk about it enough, because I don't know if you deal with this, but I know for a lot of Latina women, there's expectations of like, tienes que estar casada, you have to be married and have kids, and like, there's an age, right, where you like have to meet all those things, but you also have to be educated and have a job and be successful, and there's a lot of like conflicting, and then the society's like, you don't need no man, like you got it on your own. Like there's so many like conflicting messages between culture, society, and then like our inner compass. Like how have you balanced this expectation of what a Latina woman is supposed to be at this age or whatever, and what you want for yourself?
That's a great question. Obviously, with so many influences and so many societal pressures, it's easy to get into your own head, right? Especially once you come out of college, you're in this bubble of like, okay, I'm going to figure it out. You land your first job, cool. But then you start turning 26, 27, 28, 29. And you're like, oh, almost 30. Like, I'm still not married. Oh, I'm still dating all these weirdos. Like, And
that's the weirdo. They lead you to where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly where you're supposed to be. But you start to kind of, either start to double think everything. Like, am I doing this correctly? Am I being too selfish? Am I not listening to my parents when they say, Cásate? Like, do I settle? Like, what, all these things that run through women's heads. I think women feel it more. I feel like men are a little free flowing. And I tell all the men in my life, they have until 40 to kind of get into that really mature phase.
At this point, they got to 60. They're like, I'm chilling.
Exactly. They have their first kid at 60.
That's my perception. That may not be true for what men think.
No disrespect to...
Disrespect.
This is my personal opinion.
I'm like, Remy.
But in regards to pressure, I think it also takes someone who's really grounded and knows their North Star. So I always knew financially I did not want to be where my parents were. They gave me a great life.
Yeah.
But when it came to college, seeing, how much they made,
Yeah.
I never wanted to be in that position of having a kid and being, looking at all my money. They figured it out with the little that they have, but I never wanted to feel trapped with finance or in debt or, all these things I saw, my family really struggle with. I didn't want to go through that. So I think that has always kept me grounded. Like, no, Larisa, your career comes first. Love and all these other things will come second. But as long as you're focused on your career, that's what you could control, right? You have the most control over that. And once that came into place, obviously, you really solidify that in your late 20s, 30s. Some people are still trying to navigate their careers.
Yeah.
But I was lucky to really solidify that by my late 20s and going into my 30s. That now I'm like, okay, now I have the room. My partner and I have been together for so long that we're like, okay, we got engaged. Now we're talking about all these next steps that feel right financially and personally. Forget the noise around me. Yeah, if it was up to my parents, they would have loved to see me, when my first kid at 25, 26.
Girl.
My mom had me at 21, right? So you think about these things, but we're a different generation and there's nothing wrong with being selfish.
Period. I do think that sometimes like Latina women just get stuck in that. I don't know. There's more pressure too. Like, I don't know if you dealt with this of being like able to cook and clean and take care of your husband and like the traditional role of a woman in the household versus like defying that and being like, well, I can also have my own business and have my own career, which is also conflicting for me because my mom always had her businesses. Like she was doing her Avon, Mary Kay, like selling jewelry. Like she was doing all her things, but she was a stay-at-home mom. Like that was her job first, and she was always clear. Like mi oficio said mamá, and like cook, clean, then do her business when she has time. Like for you, when you think about that next step, how do the traditional women role? Like how does that play a factor, and how are you defying it?
That's another great question because at least my dad, I'm a daddy's girl. This man has been the cook of the family.
Shout out.
Yes. My dad is a cook and my uncles are cooks. They love to cook. They are in the kitchen. So I grew up always seeing men in the kitchen.
So Brad, is he the cook?
Yes.
Oh,
Brad
he is?
I cook too, but he,
that's his job.
He definitely cooks more than me now. But I just think, I think when I think about relationships, I definitely think it's a partnership for me. Like I shout out to, those norms and the society pockets that we're put into. But for me, I'm like, no, you better know how to cook an egg and know how to do rice. Like same thing for me. It's like survival skills, right? Cleaning, if you live by yourself, even as a male, like you should know how to clean and, get some fabuloso to clean the floor. Like
the purple.
Have a clean bathroom and things like that. So I feel like when I think about that, even finance is like, I grew up in a household where the male was the como se dice, the breadwinner, right? So I don't agree with that all the time because I'm like, if two people are working and we're building our foundation and we want to buy a house, it should be equally, something that we save up for. These are our dreams and our goals. If we're going to have kids, half and half. That's how I see things, right? I know everybody doesn't agree, but if we're two working professionals, I'm not going to have a tech salary all to myself and engineering salary all to himself. I think it's a partnership. It's definitely a partnership.
You know what I love about this conversation, I love about what our generation is doing is that the thing is that we just have the option to.
Right.
And that's the privilege. The privilege is to have options. So if you want to be the housewife, la que cocina, la que limpia, la que hace todo eso en la casa, go.
There's nothing wrong with it.
There's nothing wrong with it. If you want to have a business and do this and have a career, and you can do that too. Like that's what I love about our conversation is that there's options.
There's options.
There's
you
not
shouldn't.
No hay un camino. Like there's multiple. And that's what I want our people to have is just options.
If you want to be a housewife, you go for it. Nobody should be like, oh, go get a job, this and that. No, your priority are your kids. If you want to do 50-50 and figure out life together and grow together, that's your option. There's so many options in this life. So it's what works for you and your relationship.
I want to ask you a question around, we're talking a lot about culture and your story. What is one part of the culture that you're like, this is the most important aspect that I'm keeping with me forever? And what's one part that you're unlearning, changing, switching up? Like, what's one part that you're letting go of?
So that question, I'm going to answer with the one answer, and that's hard work. Like hard work is something I'm always going to take no matter where I go, what room I step in. My ethics, what our people have is just something in our nature. It's something that I don't think, now all this immigration talk, but we're hard workers at our core. We bring that. We wake up at 4 a.m.
In different industries, not just of service.
Exactly. In all different industries, right? Because we're also put in the stereotype that we only do industry. No, all different fields, medical, finance, everything, that we always bring this hard work mentality. And that's something that I will always bring into whatever room. But at the same time, I think we have to redefine what hard work means and also rest. I think sometimes, with previous generations, we worked so hard that we never have been able to enjoy the fruits of our labor, enjoy those luxury things that other people, other races enjoy. Why can't we enjoy the finer things in life if we really work hard? Why can't we have these houses, these cars, etc.? So it's like those things I'm like, okay, and we need to know when to rest. When to rest, right? I grew up with my dad not taking vacations because he always had to work. You know what that is? To not have a moment of just stillness and rest for yourself, for your family, be present. It's hard. I think that's one thing I'm trying to really change. Like, keep your hard work ethics that defines us as Latinos, but also know when to rest.
How have you been able to do that?
Yeah. I love my vacations. I love travel. I advocate for,
take your time off.
Take your time off. My dad calls us weak minded as a generation. I don't mean to throw him under the bus, but he'll be like, no, Lari, no estás enferma. Get you're behind to work, basically. Yeah. But it's like, no, Dad, I'm actually sick and I want to take a day off. Like, I feel sick. Yeah. So take
And they're like, what's that?
What is that? What is that? Yeah. So take your days that you need to rest. We put in so much hard work. Whatever that looks like for you, reading books, going to the spa, whatever, stillness, just whatever that is, take it for yourself.
Yeah, and you're like vacation, girl.
I love vacations, resetting. Yeah, resetting, just a reset, and knowing there's more to life.
When was the first time you rested? When was the first time where you were like, you know what, I'm gonna just chill? Because hard work is in our DNA. We don't know how to stop.
After college, taking my first big girl vacation. With my best friend Vanessa, we saved up. We're like, okay.
Is that where you met Brad?
No, it was a couple trips after.
Sorry, my bad.
that was a Dubai Milan trip. But no, we went to DR, her and I, just on a resort, relaxed for a week. And it was our big girl money out of college. We put in all this work.
Big girl.
Right. We graduated. We submitted those rented books back into the bin. And no, that was the first time that I'm like, okay, we're done with school. Let's give ourselves a mental rest and then go back to the grind.
Wow. And have you translated that in the workplace? Like when you were in that first job, you were working, did you always take time to rest?
No. Yeah, right. The irony, right? Because
like I'm learning.
Right. That first 2 years trying to prove yourself in your career. Yeah. I think you're really heads down. Really heads down, trying to find that confidence, setting those boundaries that maybe you don't have as a young professional, taking those 2 weeks. You're afraid that, they're going to say no. So no, to answer your question, I was becoming my dad where I wouldn't take a vacation, but it was actually my boss that would call me out like, hey, you have vacation days. You haven't used it. When are you going on vacation? And the more I grew in my career, the more I learned that, no, you need rest. You have your days. Yeah. Nobody's going to be like, no, you can't take your days. Take your days. Take your days.
And now you're like, I take my days, bro.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, I'm off. Goodbye.
Off the grid.
Last question I have for you is, what is something... Actually, I have another question for you. What is something you wish you said yes to? This is a random one. I just thought, I'm going to leave it there.
That's a little... Something
she said that.
Wish I said yes.
This is actually inspired. I need to give her credit. Hadi, we just had a conversation yesterday and she asked me that and she threw me for a loop. I was like, what did I said yes to?
I would say moving to another state or going to college in another state. I still stayed in
Oh, you
Queens.
never left?
I went to St. John's, but I dormed and I study abroad. So I still had
Okay.
that freedom and that exposure to college. But I was, granted an opportunity to go upstate, to go to the West Coast, and that fear of leaving my family. I don't know if it's a Latino thing or what, that we always, want to stay close to our family, and that guilt that they sometimes put on us as well. They wanted more for me, but at the same time, they wanted to have me around.
Quiero más, pero quédate aquí.
Who's going to help me with this? Who's going to help me with that?
Yeah.
So I would, just looking back, I would have said yes to that, because I think even the value of home would have been even deeper for me.
Yeah.
And going back to my roots, they always say, like, when you leave, you really learn where home is and things like that. New York is home. But I think that value and that sense of home would have hit even harder being away for a certain amount of time.
I don't even know who you'd be.
Right. Who would I be? Right.
Wow. No, because I see you as just like a true Queens girl. True Queens queen.
And you can have no regrets, but if you're asking me and I had to say yes.
No, 100%. 100%. But it's interesting to think what you would have said yes to and how it would have changed your life. What I shared was after college, this is like the first gen's dilemma. Like, do I follow what I want to do with my passion, or do I follow this career that's going to give me money? Money is always kind of like the answer when you're that young. But at 21, I had two things I was doing at the same time. I was applying for an agency. That's how you become a successful PR person, which I'm not right now. I'm successful, but not in PR. But I was applying to this agency, and I was also applying to a job to be an au pair in Chile for a family. And they were going to give me a 2-year contract with health insurance. They're like, we just need you to like teach the kids English. They're Spanish speakers, and you just have to teach them English.
And teach them English.
And come to us on vacations in this part of South America and do this. And I was like, so I got the offer for Chile and the agency around the same time. The worst thing I did at the time, and I don't know what I would have done if I didn't do this, but I called my mom. And I was like, Mami, mira, tengo una oportunidad. She's like, ¿Estás loca? ¿Cómo te vas a ir a Chile? Vete para este. And she tells me, right? And I'm like, okay. And again, no regrets, but I would have said yes. If it was just me, in that moment and not thinking about family, not thinking about like, oh, I'm leaving to a whole different country, I would have said yes, and my life would have been so different. But I'm so grateful. Like, we're here.
We can't regret, but those lingering thoughts that you're like, oh, what about,
but it's interesting to think about. Curious for the audience to think about that. Last question for real. I want to do a brindis. We don't have water with us, but we're going to do a virtual brindis. And virtual, as in like, los pensamientos. But I want to give you space. Like, what do you want to manifest for our Latino community and Latinos in general, first gens?
I want to manifest just more mentorship, just more people giving back. There's so many resources, whether it's buying your first house, whether it is starting a business, whether it is, navigating tech world. I think we don't speak about these things in community as much. And, I think other communities, especially the white communities, they are big on knowledge sharing.
Yeah.
And that's why they have so much wealth at times, so many homes, things like that, that I think the lack of knowledge sharing in our community is still lacking. And I hope to see that, with these new generations and moving forward.
I want to emphasize that for a second, because I was just having a conversation with Mariana, who does Peloton. Love her. But we were having a conversation about how a lot of Latinos are against Venezuelans right now.
Okay.
And I've been hearing that a lot in the news. I've been reading articles, and it's like, los inmigrantes no le quieren a los venezolanos because Venezuelans are coming here and getting papers so fast compared to other immigrants, and there's this competition. And what I feel like happens maybe in every community, and maybe I'm just obviously talking about Latinos, but I feel like sometimes what happens is we get privilege and then we forget where we came from.
We forget really quickly.
And we forget so quickly. And it's a conscious choice to what you're saying, to always give back and share that knowledge back and not forget where we come from. Because at one point, our parents were immigrants. At one point, we didn't know how to apply for FAFSA. At one point, we didn't know how to navigate the space being the only. We didn't know how to navigate tech, and we didn't know how to do this, which is why this space, these spaces are important. So I want to really emphasize that, because there's more Latinos coming. There's more first gens that are younger than us that are navigating the same things. Different world, but same things. So it's important for us to give back, and I hope we all do.
Cheers to that. We're
Cheers to that. We need to have our espresso martinis. We needed it. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. How do people connect with you, and how do people buy For Women? Which honestly, the jewelry is so bomb.
Thank you.
So bomb. She's like right here.
On all handles, Lariza Quintero with a Q on LinkedIn, on IG, and then For Women is FOR WMN. So on IG and also TikTok.
Hey, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Oh my, this is experience, girl. We spent so much time together. I love it.
Thank you.
Bueno, primeramente, gracias. Thank you so much for living on this platform, for tuning into these episodes. I hope y'all are always here for the Cafecito and Chisme, because we got more episodes on the way. In honor of International Women's Day and Women's History Month, I have a beautiful lineup of women. Like, yeah, I don't know if y'all are prepared for the conversations that are about to be had on this platform. Pero check out the show notes if you want to see who's in the pipeline, who's coming up. You can also see more updates on Hello Latino Podcast on Instagram, or follow me on LinkedIn, or my website, olalijasmine.com, for more information. And I'm gonna leave it on that. So, con mucho amor, tu amiga hondureña. Abrazo, mi gente. Mucho amor.